How's it going, everyone? Nick from Comic Culture here. It's time for Nick at Night, my weekly non-spoiler comic book review show. We got a ton of books to get through, so let's get through it right now. So I'm going to go ahead and put my grading scale up. How this works is I'm going to go over each and every book. I'm going to put the cover of that book on the grading scale so you can see how they all stack up against each other for this week. With that said, we're going to jump into the big two as we always do, starting with Marvel this week. And some of these books may have come out last week and some may have come out this week, so I'm not going to differentiate those two for now. But we're going to start with some Sins of Sinister, Immoral X-Men issue number 1 from Karen Gillan. Now, if you're interested in understanding how all the different Sinisters are starting to turn their backs on each other a little bit, trying to actually take over the world, you're going to get a lot of that inside of this book. Now, we were told in the other Sins of Sinister books that, even though Mr. Sinister may have planted his gene in everybody that's been resurrected, they're not all on the same wavelength. They all have this selfish need to take over and to rule the world. So this book right here kind of explores that a little bit more, specifically focusing on a couple different Quiet Council members, and even more specifically, Emma Frost. And so if you're an Emma Frost fan, if you want to know what she would be like with a little bit of Sinister mixed in with her personality, her unique personality, you're going to get a ton of that inside of this book. She kind of hatches her own plan to surprise Sinister in a way, and so this book is all about him trying to find his lab, trying to reset some time. If you're into the whole Sins of Sinister thing, you know what his ultimate goal is, and you know what he's been up to for the past 10 years. So we do focus on him a little bit, and then it switches over to Emma Frost because she has her own plans as well. So if you're interested in that dynamic between those two, if you want to know how the other Sinister clones are thinking right now and how they want to take over the world, despite the Master Sinister's plans, you're going to get a lot of that inside this book, so that's pretty interesting to see. Art-wise, it's fine. It's what you've come to expect nowadays from an X-Men book, so nothing spectacular or excellent, but, it has its moments where the colors pop and the characters look pretty cool. But I do think that this book suffers from a little bit of detail loss when you zoom out. Even in those mid-range shots of characters, you lose a lot of the detail on the actual faces and the scenery and everything. It's kind of washed out with the coloring. It's kind of bugs me here and there, but it's got some funny comedic elements as well. So Immoral X-Men, not a bad one. It's definitely a complimentary issue to the whole Sins of Sinister event in general. So I wouldn't say required reading, but I would pick this up if you're invested in Sins of Sinister. So check out Immoral X-Men. All right, next we're going to get into Thor issue number 31 from Groenbeck, and Cates is actually credited on the writing as well, and we have Nick Klein on the art, thankfully, because Nick Klein's doing some really cool stuff, and you'll see on some of the pages that I flash in here how awesome this actually gets. This issue is a little bit different from the previous issues. So we had Thor kind of exploring his past a little bit, falling into this one, not like a trap, but he was following Black Order member because he actually kidnapped one of Thor's family members, and so he was kind of following them past this old historic battle where the Valkyries were there. A lot of mystical, weird forces happening there. Met the spirit of some of his ancestors and really kind of put the fear of God back into Thor, and we're kind of coming out of that run a little bit right now, and we're actually understanding right now that Valhalla is empty. A lot of the things that were dead are now missing, and so there's this weird thing going on where Thor and Jane are on the hunt right now, actually going to Hell to try to find some answers from Hela. And so it's a pretty cool little direction here. I like where it's going. You can sense Cates in here a little bit. It's not like he's overpowering the narrative with his very unique voice and his storytelling, but there's definitely elements in here that are a little bit over the top, and I feel like that's when Cates is actually shining through. Other than that, Groenbeck is doing a really great job of pulling this story forward, making it still interesting in a post-Cates era for Thor. And of course, it really helps that we have Nick Klein on the art as well, so it really keeps things interesting. So I do like where the story is going. It's still very interesting. It's very, very isolated, so it's not a book that you're going to see a lot of reference of other runs in. You're not going to hear about Sins of Sinister inside of this book. And you're not going to hear about Thor in the other books. So again, very isolated. All of his problems and all the characters that are inside of this story are very true to Thor and very close to Thor. So it kind of makes sense to kind of keep it close to the chest there. So Thor's been really interesting. I've been digging it a lot. It's not a Cates book anymore. It doesn't have that over the topness that Cates brings to books. It's a little bit more grounded, a little bit more deep and dark. And so I would check this one out if you were vaguely interested in Kate's run. See if you like this direction as well, because so far it's been pretty fun. All right, we're going to jump into some Star Wars action with High Republic The Blade issue number 3. We're already on number 3. Charles Soule is on this one. And so I've been dipping more and more into the Star Wars books as of late, liking some of it, not liking some of it. The Blade is actually on my like column. And so this one's been pretty cool. I love the dynamic between our two main characters in here. We basically get this not family by blood, but like family by just codependency of these two characters. We follow them back when they were really younglings in the Jedi Academy. They got separated, but they bring them back in at a formidable age, and they team back up, and we get to see them go on these different adventures. One of the characters they introduce, who is actually on the cover right here, he's more of a get crap done. He's in there, I'm going to kick some ass. I'm very, very well trained in the Jedi arts, with a lightsaber, with battle, with negotiation. He also has this little bit of a humor to him as well, like a, listen, you know I could have done way worse. I'm giving you guys an opportunity to put your guns down kind of stuff, or I'm going to kick your ass kind of a mentality. He's really fun. His counterpart, she is amazing too. She has a way of kind of getting to the truth. She talks to people. I think her mental capacity is much higher. She's not really one for conflict or battle. She likes getting to the truth, and she has a unique way of understanding who's telling the truth and who's not. And I think they hint to that inside of here in this comic about like that's like her species hidden power. Like she can kind of bring that kind of stuff out of people. And I think it's really cool. And these two people together make a really interesting team. And so here we are exploring this battle on this one planet, and these two are doing what they do best. He's jumping in head first and taking on the army all by himself, and he's doing a very, very good job at it. And then meanwhile, you have the other Jedi in here trying to get to the bottom of this big dispute right here, seeing if we can resolve things without any further bloodshed. So I like the characters more than I like the story, but the story is still decent. We're trying to figure some stuff out. The characters, though, are what really sell it for me. I can't wait to see them mature and get out of this particular story arc and do some other cool stuff. But yeah, The Blade has been surprisingly good. If you're not reading it, I'd say check it out. All right, and our last Marvel book we read this week was Cosmic Ghost Rider issue number 1 from Stephanie Phillips. And I was a little bit hesitant to see Cosmic Ghost Rider come back, because in the Kate's run and in the Cosmic Ghost Rider standalone, we had basically a story arc there. We had an origin story, and I think it was Thanos wins or something like that. And then we got a little bit more about Cosmic Ghost Rider in his standalone. And so this is another volume of that in here. And so, you know, it could go either way. You know what I mean? It could be something special. It could be something pretty cringe. And I think we get a little bit more on the special side. So we'll see how it plays through. The only annoying thing about this book, I think, is we're kind of in and out of these dream states right now. We have Cosmic Ghost Rider. We still have Frank Castle as Cosmic Ghost Rider. He's in a way abandoned his Cosmic Ghost Rider-ness, that like avatar that he has. And he's wandering around trying to find odd jobs, just trying to stay alive, try to stay relevant, and stay off people's radar. So that's kind of where we are. Although he keeps dreaming, and these dreams have different layers to them. And every time we start this exciting panel, it turns out to be like a dream. And you're like, oh man, okay, it's a dream. And then it kind of goes nuts again after that. Now, I will say the one dream state in this book is actually really interesting, and I liked it a lot. It had a lot to do with like whoever's inducing these dreams trying to make Frank feel guilty about all the things he done in his past, but like he's way over that. Cosmic Ghost Rider almost finds that funny at this point. The other element to this is him in his Frank Castle form, just trying to live his life, trying to make a living, and trying to just help some people out in a more innocent way. But people are after him. He's gotten onto the radar of some pretty powerful folks, and they're now on the hunt for Frank and Cosmic Ghost Rider. And we get to see that inside this book. The art inside some of the dream states is pretty trippy. It's gnarly. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. It's detailed. It is nightmarish, so that's pretty cool. And then when we get into our more traditional settings outside of that Cosmic Ghost Rider feel, we do get some interesting art as well in here too. So it's not like heavily weighted towards one side. It's actually pretty decent throughout the entire thing. So if you're into Cosmic Ghost Rider, if you understand his origin, if you followed some of his other stuff, I think you're going to like this one. This character has the potential to get kind of cringe if it's not handled the right way. So far, so good. We'll see though. What'd you guys think? All right, next book we're going to talk about is from DC. We have Detective Comics 1069 from Ram V. If you have not been following this run so far, at the high level, what's basically going on is there's a very old ancient family who has some kind of a claim over Gotham returning back to Gotham City, taking advantage of some of the poor, misfortunate people, turning them into slaves to help their cause, and they're revamping Gotham in a way, taking over the underground, taking over some of the villains, really beating Batman down in the process. And we have some villains teaming up with Batman in a way here to really kind of get through this mess, because these guys are very resourceful and their means are extreme. And so Batman's up against the ropes in this issue. Done in a very, very Rom V way with a lot of like mystical elements and a lot of history and dynamics. So it's really cool to see what Rom V's doing inside here. And I think you're going to enjoy it if you're a Rom V fan, and especially if you're a Batman fan. And oh my gosh, does the art help out in this too? It's absolutely gorgeous. I'm loving everything I see in here. So again, I mentioned that Batman's kind of teaming up with certain villains, and we explore that in here. The backstory for the majority of the detective comics has been focused on Two-Face and that dichotomy that he's always working with. And I believe those are mostly written by Cy Spurrier. Danny was on the art for some of them. I think we have Casper Wingard on the back of this one, which is awesome because All Against All is a wonderful book. Check that one out too. Casper's doing an amazing job on that. But what I love about this one is we have a lot of people that Batman's teaming up with that he wouldn't otherwise team up with, and he's really up against the ropes inside this book. And the other amazing thing in here is we get an amazing Jim Gordon panel in here too. Batman's been beaten his entire career, and Jim's really making some kind of commentary, right? He's pleading the case to Batman that like, man, you can't keep this up. I know Batman's a symbol, but as a man, you are going to go down pretty quick at this current pace. There's no way you can keep up with this. And so Batman really takes that to heart for a moment, but then kind of, puts the cape back on and jumps back into action, regardless of how injured he is. He's got to save the day. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff happening in this book. I won't show you some of the back panels because they introduce a couple other characters in here too. But I'm telling you, if you're into Rom V, if you're into Batman, this is a must read. It's been really, really great so far. Check out Detective. All right, Human Target issue number 12 from Tom King and Greg Smallwood. If I had to categorize this whole run into a annoying or non-annoying Tom King book, it's definitely in the not annoying Tom King section, because this book was brilliant. I loved the pace of it. This was the conclusion of the story. I love the pace. The art was spectacular. The art is something else all on its own, so you really got to check that out. But there's so many twists and turns and so many ways that he approaches this story, and the way that he approaches it is in a very Tom King fashion, where he adds complexity, he messes with time a little bit, he tells parts of the story in different orders and things like that, but it's in a way that's not annoying, like I mentioned before. A little bit easier to follow, but it takes a little bit of homework, but it's not bad homework. You know what I mean? You actually have to think about it a little bit, but things seem to tie up real nicely with a nice perfect bow towards the end. But I gotta say, at the end of the day, it's all about the relationship between Christopher Chance and Ice, and it was absolutely beautifully handled, and I love the buildup of the relationship. She was someone that he was initially interrogating because of this position that he was put in. He was actually poisoned inadvertently while doing, human target type stuff. And he had a certain amount of days to find out who actually poisoned him, and other members of the Justice League of America were on that list. And she kind of became suspect turned lover in this story. And it was really beautiful to see how it was all about finding out who did this. But then as the story progressed, it didn't really matter at the end of the day, because kind of love triumphed all towards the end there. So there's so many moments between these two characters where they're arguing with each other, they're fighting, it's getting really violent, but then all of a sudden they're making up and they're having this deep conversation. And I think it's just layer upon layer of moments like that that really make this book special and something that you have to check out. I will say that Tom King's known to take the story in one direction until the very end and then twist it. There is that, but it's not the twist that you think would happen. I thought that it was going to end a certain way, and it certainly did not end that way. We kind of were given some promises in the beginning that were executed throughout this entire book. And so, props to him for not completely flipping the script and making this whole run kind of invalid, right? But yeah, this was a great book. I highly recommend this one. Again, it's not non-annoying list of Tom King stuff out there. Has some of his tropes, but he does them in a really good way in this run. Check this one out. Highly recommended. All right, next DC book I read this week was Batman vs. Robin issue number 5 from Mark Waid. If you've been liking this book, this is the conclusion of this story arc here, just because we're out of Lazarus Planet at this point, and they needed to wrap up this book as well. This book right here is going over the fact that Batman is pretty much beaten, broken, and damn near dead because of what happened in Lazarus Planet, and I believe in the last issue of Batman vs. Robin, issue number 4, so check those out to understand what happens in here. But we're calling upon the power of the whole Bat family and all of Gotham to bring our Bruce Wayne Batman back up to speed, back up to life, in almost like a Goku spirit bomb kind of a way, right? We have to summon the power of everybody in the city to spiritually bring Batman back up to speed. Because not only was he beaten and bruised in the last few issues, our demon villain took over the body of Batman and was essentially keeping him on life support while he was inside of him. So, you take Demon out, you kill Batman. How you going to bring him back? We go over that inside of these pages. So, some pretty cool stuff goes on in here. If you've been liking what you saw so far in Batman vs. Robin and Lazarus Planet, you're going to get a lot more of that inside of this book. Does it have a corny ending? Absolutely. Absolutely has a corny ending. But it did end, and it was somewhat satisfying and kind of like triumphant, right? It took a whole city to get together to save the day, not just Batman doing it this time, but the whole city got together and helped out. Lazarus Planet, interesting run. We'll see where it goes from there. Mark Waid did a great job of building up this story. I love World's Finest. I'm going to keep reading that, and we're going to see what happens coming out of this post-Lazarus world. Let me know what you guys thought of Lazarus Planet and these Batman vs. Robin books. Very interested in that. Let me know down below. All right, we got a couple more DC books left. We're going to jump over into DC horror for a moment with Sergeant Rock versus the Army of the Dead. So this book is really cool, written by Bruce Campbell. And this was, I was saying it the other day at the shop, I think this is the only horror book that survived my Christmas spirit, meaning a whole bunch of these books came out somewhere in October, November, or something like that. And a lot of these books were kind of like little one-offs, like Creepshow and things like that. We had that R.L. Stine book, other books like that. But we had this one come out relatively around that same time. But all those other books got pushed aside once we exited our like October, November mindset and got into the Christmas spirit. But this book was so cool and so gnarly that I had to keep reading it just because the art was crazy in here. The story was very straightforward but satisfying at the same time, and I absolutely loved it. It was so cool. We focus on Sergeant Rock and his platoon, his little squad here, taking on Hitler, who's actually found a way to reanimate dead soldiers to add to his ranks. And so we get a lot of zombie fighting and monster fighting, things like that. Awesome stuff. Highly recommend this book. Check this one out for sure. So much fun. And yeah, picking this up in the trade or something like that would be highly recommended. Such a cool book. Check out Sergeant Rock. Really, really fun. All right, the next DC book we read this week was Harley Quinn issue number 27 from Stephanie Phillips. Went ahead and got it because of that awesome Frizen cover like a lot of you guys did. And I thought, hey, I might as well read the conclusion of this run of Harley Quinn because Teenie Howard is taking over here soon, and Frizen has a bunch of those covers as well, so I thought I'd get prepared potentially for Teenie Howard's run. And I gotta say, I did spot check Harley Quinn here and there, maybe every like 5, 6, 7, 8 issues, something like that. I have not been reading it issue to issue for sure, just because every time I read it, I didn't like where it was or how she was written. She has a more Looney Tunes character style in here, which works for the animated series and works for the HBO series for Harley Quinn, but I don't like my comic version of Harley Quinn in that tone. I like that more Harleen, more professional approach to the comic book version. You know, and on top of that, the story that I was reading in the book wasn't that great either, but apparently we have a multiverse of Harleys all teaming up against the Harley Quinn Who Laughs. That's right. We have a Harley Quinn Who Laughs right here taking on a bunch of different Harleys. And so how? I don't know. But we explore why inside of this book right here. She apparently was traumatized because her universe's Ivy was stolen from her. And now she's apparently taking out all that frustration on the multiverse, taking out all the other Harley's Ivies and things like that. So of course, how do we combat this Harley Who Laughs right here? Well, we completely shatter the fourth wall, hit pause on the comic in general, just like the last episode of She-Hulk, do some crazy crap, and we resolve the issue within about 6 pages. So, you know, this entire war, this entire arc right here could have been resolved very, very quickly if she just had if the Harley Who Laughs had a few more people to take on these guys who stole her Ivy. So, you know, you didn't miss much, guys. You didn't miss much. Cover grab it for sure. Let me know if this has been a good run so far. 27 issues in. It's going to restart here soon, or maybe it'll continue the numbers, but just change creative teams. I don't know, but I'll be checking out Teenie's work. Hopefully it's better than this one. Let me know what you thought. All right, we're going to jump into some indies next, starting with Image Comics. We have Phantom Road from Jeff Lemire, and we have Gabriel Walta and Jordi Belair on here as well. I really enjoy Jeff Lemire's stuff, and in this book, it's no different. We have another sad dad story in here, but This one is a little bit more grounded. I love how he has a way of just making authentic, real conversations between these characters that he introduces in here. It's like you can actually imagine yourself being in this diner talking to this waitress. The dialogue seems pretty natural, and so I think that's really cool. It's a testament to his writing style. The art in here is really impactful too. I just love the scenery that we have here. I love the feel that we have. The character design is really interesting too. And we get another sad dad story, but it has a huge twist towards the end, introducing this like alien or zombie kind of element towards the end. We don't get a lot of explanation about what goes on, but in Jeff Lemire fashion, I can't help but think it's like some gigantic metaphor that I'm just not thinking about at the moment. But the story does take a very, very sharp turn in an interesting way about 2/3 of the way through this book. So I would say the art is very, very strong, trying to tell the same story that Jeff is telling, adding a lot of emotion and feel and perspective in here. So kudos to the art team in here. And I'm interested to see where it goes, man. Let me know if you read this book down below. Next book we read from Dark Horse Comics, Where Monsters Lie, issue number 2. Man, issue number 1 was one of the best books of last month. Check out issue number 1. It was so much fun. I've never read a horror story like that had that much humor also inside of it. It was terrifying and it made you laugh out loud as you read it. Great combination of like feelings when you read that book. This one, a little bit more on the horror side than the humor side, but those elements still exist in here, just not as much. But I can't really take away from that because the subject matter of the second issue is more serious, and so there's less opportunity to go nuts with the humor. But if you missed it, the basic story here is we have all these psychopath killers, all these real elaborate serial killers all living in this one gated community where they're not allowed to perform their acts there. It's kind of like a safe haven for them, and they're all governed almost like HOA style by this little old lady, and it's just hilarious to see the conversations between all of these people. And we got to explore a lot of that in issue number 1. Issue number 2, there's a tip that these people exist here and the police are investigating. Now, I don't want to show you some of the panels, but we have a couple cool scenes I'll show you because it's actually really awesome to see what's going on. And we get to see some of the cops up against these serial killers, and they're awesome. And I just love the way this whole thing plays out. And on top of that, we have our lead detective here who's very interested in a certain serial killer that he's been essentially tracking down since he was a kid. And that little element's thrown in here as well. Where Monsters Lie, it's a great book. Issue number 1 was hilarious. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. Issue number 2 is more horrific. It still has some funny things in there. Man, it's a great issue. Check this one out. All right, the next book we read this week from Scout Comics is And We Love You. This book came out of nowhere. I remember the solicitation for it, and I remember reading it, and I wanted to get into it, and I didn't hear anything about this. I think it was a Kickstarter to some capacity, maybe in the past. Somebody correct me down below, but that's what I see when I Google it. It's actually written and drawn by Fell Hound, who I am totally unfamiliar with, but we'll be checking out other work from because I love this book. This book was really cool. Now, this story is very heavy. Basically, we have a futuristic war setting. We have our female lead right here. She's right in the middle of the thick of things, and she's actually murdered in the first parts of the story, but we get to relive maybe like her final moments or watching her life flash before her eyes, something like that. We get to relive her life as of late, some of the tragedies, some of the failed relationships, some of the mundane conversations she had with some of her friends, being enlisted, being lost and not knowing where to go, joining the army, developing new relationships, specifically with this one other female in her squad who she develops a romantic relationship with, very, I would say, organically in here, and all the regrets and all the pain and suffering that she will never experience, or maybe she's experiencing it now. It's kind of all these promises that she has made never coming to fruition because of her death early on in here. And so, man, it's just really impactful to see. Some of the art in here is, it's a little shocking up front, but then as the story progresses, it all really makes sense towards the end. And what I mean is you don't really understand how beautiful it's going to be until the end of the story, until you kind of see the resolution, see the last few pages, and then everything kind of comes back at you and hits you in a way that you really did not see coming. If you're somebody who's a little bit upset about how they've been handling queer characters inside of comics, I would say that this is a really great book to check out, because I feel like this way of building a relationship between same-sex people is actually really true and honest and it has a lot of authenticity to it that we lack in some of these comics that are coming out nowadays. So I just absolutely love this book. This was so cool. I highly recommend this one. It is extra sized. It is $10 as well, but I think the story in here is impactful. I think the art is definitely interesting and shocking and brutal when it needs to be, but also real soft when it needs to be. So I highly recommend this one. It was definitely a sleeper hit of the week for me, and we love you. Check this one out. All right, next book from AWA Upshot. We have issue number 1 of Red Zone from Colin Bunn and Mike Deodato Jr. Now, this is that spy, Russian spy action thriller kind of a book with Mike Deodato Jr. doing his best to also incorporate some celebrity cameos inside of his book, and always have a great time trying to spot those folks and name them, and he definitely delivers inside of here as well. So what is this one about? We have this Russian spy, this person who has a lot of intel we're trying to extract out of Russia. There's like this military team going in there to try to extract this person, but they need someone to help them do it, and so they rely on a local expert to help do the job. It's kind of like a Da Vinci Code, Robert Langdon kind of a situation. He's like a professor, and they need to bring him in to help them save the day, and all hell breaks loose inside of this book, as it normally would. And we learned a little bit more about our teacher. He's actually more well-equipped than we assumed in the beginning, and it's going to go in an interesting place. So again, Colin Bunn, he's really great at putting together some amazing premises. Mike Deodato Jr. is awesome on the art. He draws firefights and fight scenes like none else, and I can't wait to see where this book goes. It was actually really fun. I'm really looking forward to issue number 2, actually. So Red Zone from AWA, another book that's killer. Check out AWA's Red Zone. It's pretty fun. The last book we read this week from Aftershock is a one-shot called All Night and Every Day from Ray Fox, and it's in this extra large format, kind of like a DC Black Label book. And don't remember much about this issue other than there was a lot of partying and things weren't what they seemed and things like that. Lots of fighting and also some just mayhem and Alice in Wonderland kind of stuff. And that's actually how I would describe this book. We have a female character in here, our main character, who we learn pretty early on is with a bunch of her friends, and she's actually still mourning kind of like the disappearance of her fiance. And she's actually fighting to kind of keep that case alive. Where did he go? Why did he leave? Things like that. Everyone else around her seems to be giving up on this guy, and she's still hanging on and trying to get him back in her life. But she indulges her friends and goes out to a party with them, and it kind of turns into an Alice in Wonderland situation in a way. She starts to hallucinate and go room to room, interacting with all these different people in this weird, bizarre kind of a way. And in this state of mind, she actually comes across her missing fiance. And as they team up to try to escape this hellhole in here, she learns more and more about him, maybe his motives, like what actually happened to him. Was it something that he did? Was it something she did? Did he not want to go through with it? Was he hiding some stuff? Who knows? We explore that inside of here some more. But man, things get hella trippy inside of here. We get like some Nazi torture guys. Then we get like these guys worshiping this one guy over here, and things definitely get out of hand, but she's exploring him a little bit more, maybe coming to closure about some of the things that maybe have been dwelling inside of her. Maybe she's realizing the kind of relationship they actually had, or the kind of the person that he really was. Maybe he was actually there in spirit some way, not entirely sure, but at the end of this issue, she gets a little bit more closure about her missing fiance in here. So it was okay. It was pretty confusing. I didn't quite know what was real, what wasn't real. I think there's a lot of like inner demons that she was fighting inside of this book. It seems like a pretty personal book as well. So maybe it was an opportunity to kind of bring out some feelings and put it on paper for the creative team here. So would I recommend it? It was not bad. It was not bad. It was definitely not unlike anything I've ever read before, but let me know if you read it down below and what you thought. So guys, that'll about do it for me. I hope you enjoyed that video. Let me know what you read and what your favorite books of the week were down below. And while you're down there, hit that like button. And if it's your first time watching the video, consider hitting that subscribe button as well. It's greatly appreciated. But as always, thanks again for watching. Happy reading, and I'll see you down below in the comments.